A toddler got kicked out of a UK nursery for being transphobic. I wasn't sure that toddlers could do that. Also, turns out illegals are getting a lot more than we thought. Actually, no, we knew it was happening, but the libs said, no, they're not getting social security numbers. Elon Musk unveiled that over the weekend. All that and more coming up on this episode of Turning Point Tonight. My name is Jobob. Thanks so much for tuning in. Together, we are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. This is Turning Point Tonight. Now, remember, you can email the show anytime you want, tpt@tpusa.com. You can email us whether you agree with everything we're saying or you're wrong. Doesn't matter. You can email. Glenn is going to read every single email that gets sent to that inbox. So tpt@tpusa.com. Now, before we bring our panel in, I want to talk about this almost hilarious, because of how ridiculous it is, and completely ironic story coming out of Wisconsin. There's a lot of talk about the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and this is one of the reasons why that election is so important. Last year, the Wisconsin Supreme Court, get this, said that Catholic charities were not going to be exempt from paying state unemployment tax because I'm not kidding, weren't religious enough. Yes, the charities that operated under the umbrella of the Catholic Church weren't religious enough, and therefore the Wisconsin Supreme Court said their activities are secular in nature, and they neither attempt to imbue program participants with the Catholic faith nor supply any religious materials. In other words, the Wisconsin Supreme Court, that is now run by libs in a 4-3 majority, said, well, the Catholic Church, their charities aren't religious enough. They're not disseminating religious information. Therefore, they don't get this tax exemption. Now, in the Catholic Church's charity organization, the charities in question are ones that deal with adults with developmental delays and are open to all people and not just Catholics. So in effect, the state of Wisconsin has basically said, well, you don't have enough doctrine in what you're doing as a charity. Instead, all you're doing is, showing the love of Christ, which, oh my gosh, that's such a terrible thing. The ironic part about this is now in front of the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court says, well, they aren't actually displaying enough of their religious affiliation in their nonprofits, these people in Wisconsin who hate the church so much might make it a legal requirement for charities affiliated with Christian religious organizations to tell people about Jesus. I'll give you a point on that. I think we're going to be cool with that. I think that's going to be okay. Here to comment on that and so much more is the host of A Daily Pop, Adrienne Gray, and Turning Point USA contributor, Anthony Watson. Guys, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us on.
Adrienne, we'll start with you. I think this is a super interesting development in the way kind of the Supreme Court looks at free speech and whether or not the Wisconsin state libs can target Christian organizations. Now, in your sense, right, the whole point is to help people, and whether or not your Catholic symbol or cross symbol or any religious symbol is affiliated with the charities, the whole point is that it's a charity helping people. How weird is this kind of decision by the Wisconsin Supreme Court?
Absolutely. This is completely odd, but this is exactly why the race that's going on in Wisconsin is exactly so important in this moment. The next thing they're going to say is that the Pope is just a secular motivational speaker. This is a dangerous path. As somebody who comes from a donor family, the University of Notre Dame better watch out, because if Catholic Charities is not Catholic, they're going to have to get a rebrand that says they're the Secular University of South Bend. And like I said, that's not something we want to see. It's very dangerous.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. Arguments were heard in front of the Supreme Court today. It seemed like the justices were leaning like, hey, yeah, you can't do this, and it feels like you're targeting Christian organizations, which, Anthony, is what I'd love to ask you about. Kind of this whole idea stems from a bunch of the libs saying, well, we need to get rid of religion and Christianity specifically in modern culture. Obviously, there's pushback from the religious folks out there, but at the same time, they're making headway in so many different ways. What do we have to do to make sure we can maintain a Judeo-Christian value-based society?
Well, the only way to maintain any type of Judeo-Christian value system is by being people that are involved in the communities. Because what the left does, they take everything that they don't want, they rebrand it, redefine it, and then try to push it with every kind of resource behind it so that people not have to accept it. Because if you don't, you lose funding. If you don't, you lose this and that. This isn't the first time in history that the church has been under attack, and it's still standing. These are the things that Christ told us about when he said we're going to be facing persecution. I really want to see, now that they're attacking the Catholic Church, if they're going to go as far as to telling black churches that that's not church service, it's just cookouts in pews. We'll see what happens next. But overall, the big thing that you see here is the church. It shows that the church is pivotal in the communities and how young people, how adults, and how families are shaped to now actually make a community that actually can withstand all of the pushback that they're getting now.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'd love for them to go into a Southern black church and be like, hey, you guys are not actually religious enough. Which, again, to the response would be like, oh, okay, we'll be more religious, I guess. Like, what do you want from us to do? So it's fascinating. One of the other plans that the libs use to degrade society is this. Elon was at a rally in Wisconsin talking about the same Wisconsin Supreme Court, but an election coming up that I'm sure everybody here already knows about. But at that event, he uncovered this, which I thought was fascinating, regarding illegals getting social security numbers. Go ahead and play this clip.
When we saw these numbers, we were like, what is this? In 21, you see 270,000 people, goes all the way to 2.1 million in 24. These are non-citizens that are getting social security numbers.
Yeah, this is a mind-blowing chart.
Yeah, just this literally blew us away. Like, we went there to find fraud, and we found this by accident. And this isn't political, by the way. My parents are immigrants. Yeah, this country's been great to us. My brother and sister all born in Spain. I'm pro-legal immigration. This is not political. This is not political. This is about America and the future of America.
Wow, so 2.1 million illegals got social security numbers just last year. But that's so weird. I feel like all the libs have been saying, no, that's not happening. They're not getting driver's licenses or social security numbers or registering to vote. Adrienne, at what point do the average American people kind of recognize, hey, this has been going on a long time. They've said this is not going to happen, and then it happens. They said it's not going to happen, and then it happens. At what point do the American people recognize that and start saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't be giving illegals social security numbers?
Yeah, I think that time is now. And this is giving social insecurity, if I'm going to be honest with you. This is, in my opinion, diluting the American dream. Okay. The American dream was built on hard work and success and a legal pathway to do so. So it should be insulting to all the Americans out there.
Yeah. It's interesting, too. I remember last week on Bret Baier's interview with Elon Musk and a bunch of his Doge team, they were saying like 40% of calls into the Social Security office are fraudulent or people trying to steal Social Security numbers. So I don't understand the idea that making Social Security more efficient is bad for America in some way, shape, or form. Anthony, so in California, registering to vote, you pretty much just need an address. Actually, you don't even need an address, and a social security number, which you also don't technically need. It's in an optional section when you register to vote in the state of California. How many of these people that got into the country illegally and then social security numbers specifically from the Biden administration, again, 2.1 million just last year, do we think are actually in the voting system? What I think I'm saying is there's no way the number is zero, right?
Oh, it's definitely not zero, but I go even further to say that even if it's just one voter that's taking Social Security illegally, one is how it starts to now open the floodgates for everyone else to now start getting on the train that now starts breaking the system. I think President Trump said it in his debate when Biden was saying like, oh, we're going to get everyone on Social Security. And he was just like, yeah, he beat Social Security. He beat it to death. It doesn't mean anything. You have Americans that can't get the paychecks that they need through Social Security because you have an influx of people that are on it. And the only reason that people brought people on there to get on Social Security was to secure the election. And it wasn't until the Supreme Court came out in last summer and said, if you are not a citizen, it is illegal for you to vote in our elections. That's when everyone started campaigning. And that's when the trail started shifting, because now they couldn't rely on all the people that they overloaded in sanctuary cities, that they put in all the charity centers and community centers and inner cities and all the places like New York City of all places where Mayor Adams came out and said, we don't have the money to actually support everyone that's here. So it's proven that it's not there. And 2.1 million people, it's just like, that's just the tip of the iceberg that they found. And like you heard it there, it's like, we stumbled on this by accident, but we're glad that we found it. And so it was one of those things that was swept under the rug until when people opened the room that they actually had to start cleaning out. They couldn't walk around it because they kept tripping over it. And now it's out and exposed. So now it's finally being dealt with and taken care of.
Yeah, and it's this kind of comes back on the heels of that New York Supreme Court state ruling that said, well, no, you can't. You have to be a citizen to vote in New York City, because New York City was trying to make it that anybody can vote in their election, so long as they lived in New York. Adrienne Gray, Anthony Watson will be back to talk more news of the day in just a little bit, including that story about a toddler getting suspended from a UK nursery, which is crazy. Also, we're going to check in with White House news correspondent Monica Page at the White House. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this.